Welcome, welcome. This is Gabe Hernandez, your publisher and EIC for ComicalOpinions.com. Welcome to episode 2 of our documentary series, if you want to call it that, about making our own indie created comic. If you watched the first episode, and I encourage you to do that, and I'll include a link down in the description, we went through the process of what character we selected and how we came up with that character. But to cut to the chase, we've chosen a public domain character by the name of Silver Streak, which was created way back in the golden age of superhero comics. And so the reason we selected Silver Streak is because he was very ambiguous as far as the nature of his powers, the nature of how he came to be. In fact, if you go back and read the first couple of issues of that comic, he doesn't even have a name. He's just a sort of a guy that just showed up. So we said, well, here's an established character. He has a power set that we like, which is a speedster, and he's wide open to interpretation because this first issue is very goofy and very wacky. So that's how we selected the character. I encourage you again to watch that video. This video, we're talking about actually fleshing out the character, and not just Silver Streak, but his cast of supporting characters. So we have 6 character profiles in total. We're going to step through them briefly just so you kind of get an idea of why, first of all, why it took so long to get from episode 1 to episode 2, because we had to think through every individual and kind of what made them who they are. But at the same time, we also wanted to kind of create an ensemble cast that really gave a foundation for Silver Streak to become the hero that he's eventually going to be, and also give him some antagonists that he could play off and what have you. So before we get started, if you're watching this video on YouTube, please like, comment, share, subscribe down below. If you haven't already, please sign up for our newsletter, where you'll get notified immediately about once we come out with new episodes. Also, you'll get a weekly newsletter where we'll have op-eds, all the comic reviews that we put up on our website, and see, just kind of the hundreds, actually thousands of comic reviews we've done at this point, how we've started to kind of develop into this this attitude of, well, if you want to create a comic, you kind of really have to start from scratch. We want to make sure that we get the foundations right and sort of prove to ourselves as well as to you that creating a comic book script is not rocket science, but you have to do it in the work. And so we're putting in the work, and you can come right along with us. And at the end, if you stick with us, I have a little bit of a bonus at the end of this video that if you are following along with us in creating your own comic, we'll give you the templates that we use to create these comic book characters, and hopefully you'll get some value out of them. So let's dig right in. So we're going to start off. We have six character profiles that we're going to start with. We're going to begin with our main hero, because that's the most important person in this entire comic, is Silver Streak. Now, again, in the first issue of the original comic, he has no name. He's just a guy that shows up and says, hey, I'll drive for you if nobody's going to drive for you, talking to the Swami who's looking for a race car racer to kind of not get killed by a giant fly. It gets really wacky. It gets really weird. But so we said, okay, he's a blank slate. Let's fill in that slate. So we gave him a name, something that felt kind of authentic to the time period, which is 1940, 41, in that time frame. We gave him the name of Charles, with a nickname Chick, Charles Chick Miller. His alias is Silver Streak, and his inspiration are people who have a love of excitement and adventure, kind of like an adrenaline junkie. So so the inspiration for that are people who are test pilots and race car drivers, somebody who really loves competition and the need for speed. He's male, 25, straight. Everybody in here is straight, just to kind of keep it consistent with the time period and theme. And he is a driver or test driver for Sing Industries. We'll get to that one in the next couple of profiles. He's about 5'11", weight 165. So he's kind of tall-ish, but not too tall, lean. We wanted somebody that if you're going to be a speedster, you can't be big and massive and bulky. We wanted somebody who's a little bit more on the slim side. Wavy brown hair and all the particulars of his visual appearance. Very classical, Midwestern, square jaw, brown hair kind of guy. So here's a description of his costume. It's going to borrow heavily from people who are like test drivers and test pilots of that time period. Lots of leather, driver goggles or test pilot goggles, and also the cap as well. We wanted somebody with a flight aviator jacket. A lot of that visual appearance comes down to something that looks like something you would imagine out of The Rocketeer, as an example. Kind of a mix of The Rocketeer and standard adventure serials of that time period. Let's see, weaknesses, powers, and abilities. We've listed out his power. What we've decided on is we're going to give him a speedster powers, but they're going to be sourced or created by an accident involving technology that uses gravity. So it's not going to be the speed force. It's not going to be lightning. It's not going to be a formula. It's not going to be some sort of chemical injection. It's going to be based on gravity. And we're going to flesh that out as the story moves along. And I think this is going to be a very different kind of speedster that will have some interesting abilities, namely being able to make himself more dense to make him bulletproof, but very light at the same time so he can run super fast, and even give him a little bit of a slight ability to levitate when he needs to. So let's talk about his background. Chick grew up in a small Midwestern town with 5 older siblings and his parents as the youngest of 5. Chick, got to misspell 5. 5. There we go. Chick always got the hand-me-downs and had to fight for her attention. Especially when it comes to school, and he was always being upstaged by his older siblings. Throughout his life and growing up as a boy in the Midwest, because he was from a large family, it was a really small town, he always had to fight for attention, and that sort of developed a really innate, deep-seated need for competition and to be the best. He was driven because he had to fight to get attention. He had to fight to get what he wanted. Not fight in an abusive sense, but just really a strongly competitive streak within him to kind of become the person he needs to be. So how does he get his powers? Well, he's driving for Sing Industries. The technology is experimental that he's using for his race cars. The race car gets sabotaged, and in the ensuing kind of an explosion and accident that follows afterwards, which we'll get to when we start talking about the synopsis and the plot layout, he gets his powers through that accident. And so the way he uses his powers and how he develops his powers into becoming a hero is kind of how he becomes the hero that he will eventually become in the future. Within the profile, I've also included like images that I got online for what his skull cap looks like, what his goggles looks like, the jacket, the boots, and even the gloves. Because in the comic, the original comic, he has like these steel gloves or steel hands that he uses to do a lot of chopping and burrowing. We thought, well, that's kind of weird and unusual, and that's not something you see with speedsters every day. So we gave him some gloves that we could use as a sample for that. So there it is, Silver Streak, Charles Chick Miller. Pardon me. And let's move on to the next character. We'll be really quick about this. Sai Singh. Now, in the comic, the gentleman who runs the corporation where the race cars are being developed is just referred to as the Swami. And the Swami is actually what gives Silver Streak his power. And we thought that was just kind of too goofy. It didn't make a lot of sense. It wasn't well explained. So we said, well, why don't we have sort of a wealthy but mysterious industrialist who's in charge of this corporation that's doing this research and development? And that's still plausible, but make it more of a traditional science fiction based accident that gives Silver Streak his powers. So we created this. So instead of calling him just the Swami, we gave him a name. We called him Sai Singh. He is from the Middle East, but he was educated within England's school system, which is very typical for well-to-do individuals at that time. We try to keep as much of his background a mystery because we want to use that mystery in the future if we decide to do more than one script in an ongoing series. So he's essentially a good guy, but there's enough ambiguity about him because he uses some of his technology to work with governments and sometimes to work with the military. And that puts him at moral odds with a lot of the characters in his circle of trust. So that works out for our benefit because that gives us an opportunity to explore conflict in the future. But at the same time, he's just good enough that he's supporting what Chick is trying to do within the course of now all of a sudden gaining these powers and becoming a hero. The next character we want to talk about is Dr. Eli Catan. Okay, so this is the where Sai Singh is the wealthy industrialist, which is a little bit gray, but mostly on the good side. Dr. Eli Catan is the polar opposite of that. He's a bad guy through and through. He is also a wealthy industrialist, very smart, but ruthless, not at all morally gray. He's definitely on the side of evil. He will lie, cheat, murder, and steal to get what he wants, to get ahead. He's all about the wealth. He's all about the success and the accolades and the glory, even if he has to do all kinds of bad things to get to it. And he's the one that's also funding any kind of attacks or sabotage attempts against Sai Singh. And he's the one that's responsible for the sabotage against Chick Miller that is responsible for the accident that gives him his powers. Next character up is Aline Conover. So she's a data analyst. She's very well versed in mathematics, and she works as a research scientist for Dr. Sai Singh. And technically, she acts as the assistant to her father, who we'll get to in a minute. She's very smart, very snappy. She acts as the foil for Chick Miller's personality. So he kind of fancies himself a little bit of a ladies' man, but she gives as good as he gets, or I says, yeah, she gives back to him right what he gives to her. So they're not quite love interests to start, but that potential is there. We want to leave it open ended so that there's a possibility that the two of them can get together. But for right now, she sort of looks. She sort of mothers him a little bit and sort of acts like the disappointed older sister whenever Chick gets a little bit into trouble. Next up, we have Dr. George Conover. So this is Aline's father. He is the main scientist that is responsible for the technology that it was created under Dr. Sai Singh's corporation that creates the race car that gives Silver Streak his powers through the sabotage accident. So he's a brilliant scientist. His daughter takes right after him in the smarts department, although she's more focused on math. Dr. Conover is more focused on physics and the experiments with gravity, which lay the foundation for Silver Streak's power. But he's absent-minded and a little bit scatterbrained, partly due to just him being grounded with his wife who died many years ago. Aline Conover, his daughter, steps in to take that sort of support and caregiver role to kind of keep her father in check, because sometimes he just loses things. He's not senile, he's just absent-minded. And she sort of balances him off so that way he doesn't get into too much trouble. Brilliant scientist and all about helping out where he needs to. Next up, we already covered Dr. Eli Catan. So now we have Dr. Sai Singh has his foil in Dr. Eli Catan. Chick Miller, who is Silver Streak, will have his foil in Troy Campbell, aka the Fly. So in the original book, the cars were being attacked by this giant mutated fly that was created by Dr. Catan, and it just seemed kind of silly and dopey and didn't seem to make any sense. So he said, well, instead of having him attacked by a literal giant fly, what if we had him attacked by a killer, a hired thug, an assassin who was nicknamed the Fly? So we created this individual named Troy Campbell. He's a little guy. His small stature gives him a bit of a inferiority complex, which really sort of puts him in that bully realm. He's tired of being picked on, and so that he turned from, I'm going to make something out of myself despite my small size and being picked on, to I'm going to make something out of myself and I'm going to be a bully back to the people who bullied me. So he just turned nasty through and through as he grew up in life. So he doesn't have any superpowers of his own, but he has incredible strength for climbing and holding on to strange surfaces and some jumping. And so Dr. Eli Catan builds on that by giving him a suit and gadgetry that allows him to stick to walls and get into unusual places so that he can carry out his acts of sabotage and in some cases acts of assassination. So when you put all that together, that's our cast of characters. It took a while to get there because we wanted to think everything through: how tall they are, what are their backgrounds, what motivates them, what are their personalities like, what color is their hair, what color is their eyes, and really think all that through. It took a while to get there, but we got there. So that's it. And what we anticipate for people that are following along is, if you are creating your own comic book script and you are creating your characters from scratch, what we would hope that you would do is do this same thing. Take this character profile, fill it out as much as you can, really sit down and think about who are these characters, what drives them, what motivates them, and how are they the persons that they are eventually going to, how are they going to act in your comic? Why do they act the way they do? Why do they say the things they say? And if you have the profiles in front of you, that makes that job a lot easier. And so the bonus is, if you've watched this video or if you're just reading the notes down below, we've included a link to a Google Drive with a template for each one of these documents. So you can fill out the same information just like we do. And then hopefully that'll make your job easier. And that you can figure out how these characters are interacting with each other in this world that you've created from scratch. And that'll send you on your way. So what's next up? The next episode, which will be episode 3, is we're going to come up with our synopsis. So if you think about how do writers pitch to the publishers, a lot of these characters are already done for them if they're established IPs. But if those IPs are existent, what they do is they put together a synopsis. Basically, it's a pitch. It's a 1 to 2 sheet document where they fill out, okay, this is a story I want to tell. Here are the things that are going to come out of it. Here's what happens to these characters, and just really give you the kind of the short summary version, sort of the Cliff Notes version of how that story works out. So in episode 3, we're going to do the synopsis, and we'll even put it out there for you for everyone to see. And then once the synopsis comes in, the next one will be the outline. Then we start writing the actual script. I know it seems like a lot, but in real time, if we were doing this full time, all day, every day, the timeline to do this would be much shorter. But you're going to follow along with us, and we're going to learn as much as hopefully that you will. So don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe. If you want the copy of this template, the link will be down in the description. Also, I encourage you to go watch the first video so you can see how we came up with the character and why we selected Silverstreak. And thank you very much for joining us. So I am Gabe Hernandez, your publisher in EIC for ComicalOpinions.com. I am very glad that you came along with us on this journey, and we are looking forward to seeing you in the next episode. Have a great day.